We are so excited that you're here tonight on this special webinar called The Secret to Inner Healing, 3 Best Steps to Overcoming Narcissistic Abuse. Hi, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy, and what's so special about tonight is that, and we didn't plan this, is World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. So I'm feeling really emotional in light of that because of my own journey, of where we are in this moment and the significance of what's happening, that we're trying to draw attention to this and around the world. I think this is just really incredible that we're doing this with this timing tonight with you all. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm joined by 2 amazing women that I so greatly admire. So let me first introduce myself and then introduce them. As I mentioned, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist and author of a memoir called Love You More. And I have since published 2 other workbooks and co-authored the most recent one with Sonni that was released 2 weeks ago, which I'm super excited about, called Surviving to Thriving. Despite my education, extensive training, and experience, I fell into a narcissistically abused relationship that about destroyed me. So let me also introduce Sonni. She's a relationship coach extraordinary, has a huge platform with nearly a combined total of 1 million followers, which I find super amazing. She's also authored several books, including the Trauma Bond Recovery course, and is an expert in trauma bond recovery. And then my other co-host is Faye, who's also a relationship coach and a huge creator. She's the author of Narc Free Journal and has a super cool line of merchandise. If you haven't checked out, I please urge you to do. I love her stuff. And she also specializes in recovery, but particularly recovery after abuse. So tonight, we would like to share with you the secret to our specific journey of healing and how we would like to hope to encourage you along in your own process as you're in this similar journey with us. Narcissistic abuse is a powerfully shaping experience that I know left me very, very confused. During that period of time, we often don't know what's happening. We think we've met the love of our life. And then slowly, almost like, I know they say it's literally not a true example, but like a frog in warming to boiling water, it begins to shape, erode our confidence, and begins to make us feel off-kiltered and leaves us on high alert and distrusting of ourselves. We end up feeling broken and super insecure. And if you're like me, most of us end up with this mental fog where we no longer distrust those around us, but we also don't even trust ourselves. So how do we know when we exit these relationships that we're on a path to healing, that this is the right path that is going to lead us where we want to go? So what we'd like to do tonight is we're going to take turns describing our key experiences that were obstacles in our own healing, areas that sort of left us floundering, really impacted our sense of self. And as we answer what those obstacles are, we also then will ask each other a question around that topic, kind of give you a sense of each of our journeys around each of those areas. And then we're going to turn it and talk about how we're addressing those areas in our healing. So I'm going to go first. My greatest obstacle, which kind of ties into a little bit what I mentioned, is that before I ended up in this narcissistically abusive relationship, I was married for a long time, had a private practice as a psychologist, had been counseling individuals for more than 20 years. And I knew narcissistic personality disorder. I treated them in the office, and I felt good enough, I felt educated enough to know how to spot it. In fact, when I met my ex, I knew he was narcissistic. It didn't really surprise me, and we kind of even joked about it. But what I didn't know was that there was a risk of relational harm. That was the part that I was unaware of, that it wasn't covered in my training. And the other thing was that I was widowed, and I had heard that widows often made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't really want to be one of those women that people like, yep, kind of figures, she's kind of floundering and she's not making good decisions. So when I met him, I had no clue that I was entering into this, one of the most horrific experiences of my life, and that I felt like I should have known better, that if anybody should have been able to spot it, it should have been me, because of my education, because of my training, and certainly because of my experience. And yet I didn't know. So it left me feeling very ashamed, very insecure. And it was something I even carried into my healing. I just felt like I could hardly keep my head up. I certainly felt like I couldn't share to other people. I felt like people were looking at me wondering, what in the world happened to you? So Shame for me was a huge piece of something that I had to grapple with. So let me ask you, I want to first ask Lisa, how did the abuse impact your sense of self, and how are you trying to heal that woundedness?
For me, it was really challenging being in this relationship, not realizing that I was being abused. I had no idea that that's what it was. I was in a relationship that wasn't always happy. I was in a relationship that often made me happy and often made me completely miserable. So there was always this really big, extreme difference. And I kind of couldn't keep up with it, but I was happy enough. I told myself I was happy enough that I could manage what was wrong with the relationship. And I certainly was feeling like it was my fault. I think that's something we can all very much relate to, that there's a huge sense of blame shifting and playing the victim that happens. And between that and the manipulation and the gaslighting, you really start to believe that you're the problem. And if you're the problem, then you need to continue to work on it. You need to continue to try to do better. And that's what I tried to do. I constantly tried to please him. But what this was doing to me and my sense of self was it was slowly destroying me. I didn't have the language or the knowledge at the time, but truly I was experiencing cognitive dissonance, yes, about him, but about myself. I couldn't figure out how I could be the kind of person that would be in a narcissistically abusive relationship, in any kind of abusive relationship. I was too strong, too smart, too educated. It just wouldn't happen to me. And I feel a bit of a sense of shame about those feelings now, because I think that so many people, myself included, sort of just feel like it's going to happen to someone else, but not to me. I couldn't believe it. I was very driven at work. I had very senior level positions. I was sort of a take no prisoners. I had a reputation, a good reputation, but a reputation for being very firm and very strong in my work. I had great friends, great family. There'd be no way that I would ever be. So as I started to realize that something was wrong, it was such a struggle to be able to even look at myself in the mirror often. I often just sort of internalized his negative narrative about me. And I think that I deep down thought that I was flawed and I was unworthy, even though had you asked me at the time, I would have said that I love myself and that, I would never let someone treat me this way. But I was very much letting someone treat me this way. It felt different to me, or what I told myself was that it wasn't that he was treating me badly. He was having a bad day. There was stress at work. There was always a thing, some external factor that I allowed him to convince me was true. And truthfully, if I'm being honest, I started to make the excuses for him. I was groomed to provide him the excuses. He could do anything. And I always sort of let that be the excuse. I was always open to the idea that there was a reason, that could not just be he's a terrible person or that he's an abusive person. I excused everything. So I really just struggled to reconcile that, the cognitive dissonance, even in terms of him. He was so charming and magnetic that even when things were bad, I remembered what it was like to be with that good version of him. And as usual, we hang on to that. But I was genuinely just destroying myself the entire time, truly destroying myself. So in terms of what I did to help myself, part of it is building a sense of education around what's actually happening, being able to name the things that were happening, which is really difficult because I didn't have people in my life that were aware. I wasn't telling them the specifics. I was very much keeping it to myself. And also, even if I had told them, I don't think that even my friends and family really had the language to describe this for what it was, which is abuse. Not even necessarily narcissism, but abuse or really awful. Even the word toxic. No one said these words to me, but in their defense, I wasn't sharing the information. So it took counseling. Couples counseling was the first one that worked for me. I had individual therapy prior to that I found especially invalidating. But it wasn't until I ended up in my second couples counseling situation where that particular therapist, and I would get really emotional about it because she's one of the people who saved my life. She recognized it for exactly what it was, specifically narcissism, but she recognized exactly what was happening to the point where she actually shut down our sessions due to the amount of danger that I was in. There was a physical risk to my safety. So she tried in the beginning, but as she started realizing, like, wait a minute, that abuse thing didn't happen just 9 months ago. It's actively still physical abuse now. And so this is a safety concern. So it was really around meeting her and having that therapy and the abuse dynamics, like I said, sort of unraveling everything and starting to put labels and make sense of what was happening. And then truthfully, transforming into talking about it online to it becoming a business and to it becoming a real platform with an unbelievable amount of people following me, which I'm so grateful for and so saddened that there are so many people who need that kind of help. But being able to turn, it's so cliche to say, but turning my pain into purpose really helped me so much be able to feel empowered to speak and feel like my voice was helping other people. It wasn't just me complaining, and you hear a lot of complaining about your ex when what we're talking about is what happened to us rather than what they did to us. And I think that there's a real difference there that's very important. And then the last bit is, and being able to connect with survivors. And it's through my platform that I've been able to do that. But even with women like you and other survivors, meeting people and making friends. So it was really, Narc Talk that was the launch for me in finding my community of people. So hearing the stories that we've all shared, and, even I, who make videos about the topic, I see other videos and I'm like, me too. Even just 2 days ago, I was like, memory unlocked. Wow. Because someone else made a video and it stuck with me. So building this community and being a part of this community has been incredibly healing for me.
That's powerful. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. So, Ro, what insecurity are you overcoming and what has been most helpful in the healing in this area?
Yeah. So for me, a lot of the shame that I felt was silenced. So if I felt embarrassed that I was going through this, that I didn't know, and I'm a person that wants to know it all. I want to know exactly what the ins and outs are. And so just even not knowing that I was being abused, not knowing that being yelled at every day isn't a normal marriage, hiding my Starbucks orders, hiding my sushi takeout, hiding clothes that I bought on sale, albeit anything that I bought for myself because of the financial abuse it was almost like ingrained in me. It was like I wasn't allowed to spend any of my own money on myself. And I didn't know that that was abuse. So not recognizing that and not having the knowledge that that was something that's not a healthy dynamic in a marriage was embarrassing. So embarrassing that I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to ask for help. And the biggest insecurity I had, and this is something that is my own personality, is I have a difficult time asking for help. And the help that I needed was being seen and validated. The help that I needed was somebody, anybody in the world understanding what I went through, understanding and just even listening to me and saying, yeah, that is really messed up that you have to hide your purchases. That is really messed up that you have to make an excuse for buying a $5 coffee. On the backside of that, it's like, well, my ex-husband would spend hundreds of dollars in one night, in 1 hour, doing God knows what. And so having that, like, why am I in the wrong here? And why do I feel like this? And who can I talk to about it? Was really difficult because I just felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And I also had a lot of pride. I also had a lot of, well, I should have known, or how come I didn't see it? So the biggest insecurity I was overcoming was just having my voice back and being heard and understood. And same with Lisa. I had a therapist that literally saved my life. She was a couples counselor, and she was supposed to help our marriage and was supposed to be on that trajectory of us like working on our marriage. And she's divorced. And so the very first thing my ex would say was, well, she's divorced. How would she know how to help our marriage? Right? But she validated me in those sessions. She saw me, she understood me for the first time in a really long time. And I had a lot of ride or dies. I had a lot of people in my life who were there to support me. And even though they would understand and they would hear me, I couldn't talk to them because of that shame, because of that embarrassment, because I should have known this. Like, how come you couldn't get a Starbucks? How come you couldn't have a conversation? How many times has that happened and you didn't tell your best friend? So like, that was a huge insecurity. I was like, how could I talk to people? Having that one therapist open up that door, that opportunity for me to actually have a voice and be seen and heard and understood was the most helpful. It was like game changer for my healing. Once those floodgates open, it was like anybody that I met, anybody that I talked to, one video, one YouTube clip, one conversation. If I saw it on TV, oh, that's narcissistic abuse. And I could be comfortable recognizing that and identifying that as, I went through something similar. That's something I went through too. Like, I should talk about it. And I could feel a release to be able to just let it out because I was bottling it all up. So that's been the biggest part of my healing, is just talking. And I think the more we share, the more we just breathe it out and not push it down, it helps, like, the healing just becomes exponentially, like, you know, our whole life is supported through it. And we don't even have to, you know, we don't have to work too much. It's just, you know, releasing memories. So yeah, that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, for me, it was a little different. I didn't know that I had wrapped my identity up into the person, that my identity had been first as a child wrapped up in the healthiness of my family. And then my identity had been wrapped up in the healthiness in whatever relationship I was in. So if the relationship was sick, that meant I also reflected the failure of the relationship, that it was my sickness too. It was part of my identity, my shame. So one of the first steps I had to do is to say, you know, this is being done to me. It isn't something I'm doing to myself, and I'm a separate individual. But that was really hard for me to come to. In fact, I think the pivotal moment for me, and this is one of the things I really think is so powerful and so important, is that when we name things, we destigmatize them and we take their power away. So I remember clearly, I was wrapping up writing the book, and I was feeling kind of writing the epilogue, and I was talking to my adult sons at the time, and I broke down and I started crying, and I said, you must be so ashamed of me. You must be so ashamed of what I'd done. And my oldest, who tends to be a little more critical one, he looked at me and he said, no, Mom, this person used your best parts against you. And just having him label that like that and be near tears with me and feel so much compassion, I felt like I had been set free. That not only now I knew it's not my fault. I didn't make somebody be bad. I didn't make somebody do this. I didn't know when I got in the relationship that this is what I was signing up for. But to have outside validation that this person's shame, that's where the shame belongs. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the one that did this to us. That this person's shame isn't my own. And that for me was super, super powerful. So we're going to go to the next obstacle. And Lisa, what was your biggest obstacle in healing?
I found my biggest one was in my support system, in my friendships, in the people around me. I had have an excellent family to support me. And I think I've learned over the years to adjust my expectations of how people can support you. You have to recognize what people can and can't do, and, you know, recognize that whatever you're going through, of course, is what you are going through, not what they are going through. But, you know, the way that I always sort of tell people now, because I can reflect back on it in terms of how to build a support system, it's looking at what you need first. Forget everyone around you and just think of what is it that you need. Because I realized that what I needed, I wasn't getting, and I didn't have it, but was I asking for it? Did I know what I needed? So it took work on my part to really learn that. So I had great friends that were there for me and listened to me ad nauseum, go on and on, as we all often do, right? It's a half a joke anyway, that it's obsessive, the way that we go on and on, because we are in such a state of shock and disbelief that this could have been done to us. And we're just coming out of that fog where we're starting to realize that it's abuse, and you're starting to learn the name. So then you're like, hey, I just learned this word. It's called gaslighting. And it happened to me for 10 years. And this is what it means. And this is what it is. And then memories start happening. So when I say ad nauseum, right, I think we can all mostly agree that we go on and on about it. So I had amazing friends that would listen. I had amazing family that would listen and or help me financially when I needed it. And I was very lucky to have that. And yet I still received invalidating statements. And I remember there was one in particular that was, in fairness, life-changing, friendship-changing type of comment that was made that I truly believe was made with pure intentions. I do believe that, friendship ending regardless, that we were mean to each other and that I needed to take some responsibility for, like, yes, he was absolutely awful. And yes, he was even worse, much worse, but that I had contributed by also being rude back or being aggressive back, not physically abusive, right? But, and I'm not even talking about reactive abuse. I'm just talking about like general being like annoyed at someone for just constantly being awful to you. And so by the time that comment was made to me, I had already overcome it was my fault. So it didn't make me feel sad as much as it made me feel super angry that someone could say that to me when they had been there for the duration of the relationship and seen how bad it was and was the only person who really knew about the physical abuse. So it just, yeah, it was something I couldn't get over. And so that person is not in my life, but that came from shaping this support group and building what I needed around me. Finding a sense of community who do understand really is the secret. It's about finding the people around you that can build this really supportive, empowering environment where you're being validated, you're learning, and there's just something different about being able to share your experience with a person who has been through the same. And I know all of our stories are unique, but we see from all the videos that we post, so many people have such similar stories. So it's the entry into this community. You feel like you're part of like a secret club almost, where you get in, and it's a terrible way to meet people and bond, obviously, but the validation is indescribable. And the truth is, did not expect to get emotional saying this, 2 of my closest friends are sitting right here on this panel. And you guys understand. And that was life-changing to me, being able to connect with people. And I know, Ro, like you used to watch my videos when your account was smaller. Mine was smaller too. We're all growing. But it's the craziest thing to me. And I remember we hosted an event last year, so a group of us, and one of the people on the panel was like, I got her book, my book, and it helped me so much. And now I'm standing on a stage with her. And I'm like, I'm standing on a stage with you. The community that you get, the validation, it's something you can't explain. And being able to kind of break that isolation, because ultimately not being validated and not having a support system and not really having your friends and family truly be able to validate and understand, it is the most isolating thing. And it still allows you to sit in the blame. You need that support of the community to tell you, like, it wasn't my fault and it wasn't your fault. We can get through this together, and just hold hands, cry, whatever you need to do to kind of get through it. But being able to kind of process your emotions with other people. And as I referenced before, that kind of unlocked memory, that made me think, and I'm going to make a video about it. And then hopefully it unlocks a memory for someone else, and we can all share and grow and do this together. You gain new perspectives and new insights when you have this community of people, and you have to build it. You have to be around these people. So you can't just hope to meet someone. You have to seek out your people. And if that's in, a Facebook group, if it's online or some other place, or if there are support groups in person, it was tricky because it's been COVID for years, but finding that group is so important, and finding the strength to be able to say to people who make invalidating statements that it's an invalidating statement and that it hurts, and there's a better way to approach it. You can get to a place where you're healed enough that you can find the language to explain it to some people. Some people will never get it. and those are not your people. And some people will get it and will try to do better. I know, like, my parents never made invalidating statements purposefully, but they have both learned a lot as well about what happens and why you stay. Because it makes no sense, of course, right? People are confused from the outside why you would stay. And I think we can all relate to this too. I don't know why. I know why now, but at the time I couldn't have answered the question. I didn't know what a trauma bond was. And I definitely didn't understand the addiction aspect. I think something I hear a lot is, I don't know, I'm just stupid. I don't know, I just love you. I don't know, I'm stupid for loving you. And that's how we feel. But you start to learn more and you can educate yourself and educate those around you, which is great. So it beats that, the feelings of isolation and self-blame from having this community, but also you get this amazing emotional transformation. And I think that's incredibly important, to have this transformation, to interact with all of these people. You grow as a person. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I'll never be that person again. To a degree, there's a bit of grief for the person that can't exist anymore. And the experience is different for everyone. I did feel some grief, not a lot, if that's even a way to measure it, but I didn't feel a ton of grief. I know some people absolutely do, but I actually have focused so much on the person that I've become. It's not that I'm indestructible. I joke that I'm indestructible, but I have such a strong sense of self from building a community and being part of a community and allowing myself the opportunity to experience validation and lifelong friendships. This is not something that any two people can really bond over unless you've truly been through it. And abuse and narcissistic abuse, narcissistic abuse is just a little bit more deceptive, a little bit more insidious. So you are really in this little niche group of people who've been through something and survived it. And the strength that I have and that everyone now around me has, we just vibe off of each other. If any one of us is ever having a bad day, you have this community you can rely on to just be like, today was so hard because something happened or I had a memory or whatever. And you have these people around you. If you can find this in person, I feel like the in-person connections can sometimes feel stronger. There's just a way to kind of connect with people in person. So having met so many of my online community, my online friends is unbelievable. But if that's not an option, getting that community online is great too. The clarity that you get in really knowing that it's not you, it wasn't your fault. And as you said earlier, Kerry, that you didn't let it happen to you as much as it was something that happened to you. It's not something that you chose to be a part of. You would never have willingly chosen to do that. You didn't, give consent to be abused. It just happened. The pieces start to come together. You go from feeling stupid and not knowing why you stayed to learning that it's called a trauma bond and this is what it means and this is why it feels so addictive. So that has been so amazing. And I've had increased self-esteem. I feel so empowered. I feel that part of me is back to my old self where I can do anything. I wanted to write a book. I wrote 4. I wanted to write an online course. Done. I wanted to build a big platform. Done. So, and it's just what's next, and that aspect of being able to rebuild is just unbelievable. So I also have some questions. So Kerry, I'm going to start with you, and I want to talk about the ways that the absence of validation and understanding kind of exacerbated the emotional harm caused by the abuse that you faced.
Yeah, what a lot happens for a lot of us is we end up also in communities that are troubled, and we don't realize that it isn't just the abusive person that isn't healthy, but also our support system isn't healthy. And at the time, I was in another country with a problem of a language difficulties, and then the community that was English speaking there were very conservative religious people and had strong feelings about what was the problems going on in my marriage, the fact that there was sexual addiction going on, but also that I was feeling a lot of intense feelings. So when I would express my rage or talk about my shock over what was happening and what I was discovering, I would get comments back about that I seemed really angry, as if my reaction was the problem, not that the problem was the problem. So I found myself censoring that I would give enough information to say things weren't great to try to elicit support, but not enough to where I would elicit judgment. And I just felt like I was shutting down in the relationship, and then I was shutting down because I couldn't feel safe in my community. I'll never forget when he was hoovering me back, and I also was going back because I had an ulterior motive that I needed to rescue something for myself. So I wanted to go back into the relationship to see if I could have that work out. But I remember calling my mom and telling her that I was going to go back, try again. And she said, "Oh, you're going to be one of those women." And I just thought, there's just no support anywhere. So I found myself really becoming increasingly private, which made it very hard for me to know how to get help, because you have to say something to get help. It has to be safety for help. So one of the first things that I did when I got out was I joined a group. It was an online community group run by a coach, and we met 3 hours a week, actually. It was very intensive, open-ended, and I spent those hours every week with women who had been in a similar position than me, and just having the safety of being able to say really shocking things, very disturbing things that now that I've met all of you as a community and the stories you tell me, things that most of us have experienced, to know that it was normal for us, that there was no judgment, there was a lot of acceptance. That was so healing for me to find that support. And I agree. I find that being a part of this and hearing your stories, hearing the two of your stories, hearing each other's stories, that when we're able to speak these things and discover commonality and acceptance and support, that it just is so healing, because it does diminish not only the isolation, but also the degree that we blame ourselves and feel deeply shamed for it.
That's, yeah, wow. I'm such a tough story, and I appreciate sharing that and hearing, how everyone has experienced such similar things. It just brings us all together under such unfortunate circumstances, but good nonetheless. Ro, my question for you is, in what ways did gaining the validation, the clarity, the connection that we're talking about from others who shared similar experiences, how did that positively impact both your self-esteem and your kind of overall mental well-being?
Yeah. So, you mentioned this before. This is like a private little club no one asked to join, right? That's what we're in. Yeah, right. Connection. We're brought here through people with shared experiences. Unfortunately, these are not very good experiences. These are painful, traumatizing experiences that we didn't want to be in, and we didn't know we were in. So you lose your confidence. You lose your ability to connect with other people, because you feel like you're not hearing. They're not hearing you. They're not understanding your language. And like on the topic of language and being in another country with another language, what this was like for me was being in another country and not speaking someone's language. Like the language of abuse. What is that? How do you can hear people talking, you can see it happening, you feel it, that something isn't healthy, something's really toxic, it's putting you in a depressed state. In my relationship, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I didn't want to go anywhere. I was isolating. I couldn't talk to anyone. And I couldn't even muster up words and have conversations. I'd stare off into space and watch my kids play. And, I wouldn't say that I had any ideations, but I definitely thought about what would it be like if I just disappeared right now? What would it be like if I just went away? Or if my ex-husband walked in and I wasn't here, here. So it was like being in another country and not speaking someone's language. And I think the biggest tool that I gained was the secret language of a survivor, talking to people who understood me, who spoke the same language as me, who knew. And I would learn. It's like learning. I was watching Lisa's videos and I'm like, that's what that is. I know this is what I went through. And somebody else went through it too. Reading the comments and going, did we marry the same man? Are we is this is a thing? I cannot believe this is a thing. And so my confidence came back and I started to see things. The world was brighter. I wasn't staring off into space anymore. as I was healing and I was learning the language of abuse and understanding and meeting with people and connecting with people who spoke the same language as me, who understood what I'm saying, and I'm understanding what they're saying, we lift each other up, and now we become stronger, and we're all stronger than before. And we're also speaking on the same level. So you can cry together, you can be emotional together, you can be vulnerable together. And it just gives you this sense of strength. And that is a secret. Like it is a little secret little language, a secret little club that we're in. None of us asked to join, but boy, does this help us move forward and build our confidence back and my well-being, my mental well-being that I never thought could ever be fixed, that I thought I was just destined. There were parts in my marriage where I looked at myself, looked in the mirror, and I actually said these words: this is a life you chose. This is it. This is it for you, Rossana. You're stuck with these 3 kids, and this is what you chose. And this is what I'm going to have till my last breath. And I actually believed that was my life, that I chose it. I walked down the aisle. I did it. I have to see this through. And so to be able to break free from that and learn this new life and this new language and heal from that and be able to rebuild those broken parts of me into somebody that he'll never know. He never gets the honor of knowing who this new person is, ever. We get to transform into a person that he'll never get the honor of knowing. And that is a superpower. And that's something that I gained. And community helps you gain that. This is what's going to happen to all of you, is you're going to be a new person. You're going to transform. It's going to be so transformative that person isn't even that. You do have to say goodbye to that person, right? And detach that person with love and say, it's okay. We got this. We're new now. We're a shiny new person and we're not their toy anymore. I love that.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful.
So, Ro, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, that shell of a human being that I turned into in the end of the relationship, I had amnesia. Like I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a sense of style. Like I never wore now I'm turning into this like little fashionista, I got this merch line and I can be self-expressed. And the thing with narcissistic abuse is there's this power dynamic or this kind of shift where I call it the great exchange, where near the beginning of the relationship, you've got you're in this place where you kind of know yourself. Then you meet someone who has zero sense of self. And then near the end of it, they shift and they are grandiose and they've got all your qualities and they've almost stolen it from you like an emotional vampire. And you are a shell of a human being. You lose who you are. You don't know who you are. And for me, I lost my identity. I forgot what my favorite color was. I didn't know what kind of music I liked. I almost gaslit myself into not liking sushi or Starbucks because of the financial abuse. So I didn't know what my tastes were. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what drove me, what boosted my confidence, what gave me joy, because I didn't feel any joy. He stole it from me. He didn't want me to have it. It made me feel so shameful for even enjoying any moment. And so I just became really just dull and gray and a shell of myself. And, I never put any makeup on. I didn't do my hair. I wore a lot of gray. So that's why I say gray. And one of the things he used to say to me was, your skin is so gray. Like, your skin is so gray. Well, of course, I don't go out. I don't get any sunshine. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to see anyone. I'm totally recluse, just like, hiding out and isolated. I wasn't bright. These people take the best parts of you and dim it down to nothing. And so I lost my identity. I felt like, who is Ro? I don't know me. The biggest obstacle was regaining my identity. The only way that I could do that is learning what I went through, watching these videos. It turned into it was such a coincidence. I just downloaded TikTok one day for fun, just to pass time in my healing. And I'm like, I'll just make some fun videos and just see kind of what goes on. And then all of a sudden I see one of Lisa's videos I see, a self-aware narcissist Lee Hammock on there. I start to see videos popping up, and it's almost like, does the internet know what I went through? Like, how did this happen? And I started learning about it. And as I'm learning, of course, what Lisa said, you get these echoes of the past, you get these memories. And then I started becoming inspired to create and make a video about my life. And part of that was healing. Part of that was just freeing some of the negative thoughts that were ruminating in my mind, but also it was creativity. I tapped into my creativity and realized I'm actually a really creative person. I can actually make something and not just consume things, but create for others, and didn't realize how it was going to impact other people in the community. So gaining my self-expression through creativity, it was the building block for me to kind of see who I was. And I'm like, wow, I'm actually funny. I'm actually, I can sing. I like pink. It's my favorite color. Like, things started to come back to me, and it started to rebuild me, like, from the ground up, who I was as a person, who I was like pushed into a little corner by this person. And I started like jumping out, and like little tiny jumps out into like who I am now. And now I look in the mirror, and I'm looking at myself, and I'm like, wow, this is who I've been waiting for. Like, I wish I could tell myself 5 years ago, don't worry, you're coming back. Like, you'll be back. Right. So really gaining myself, the biggest obstacle was really regaining my self-identity. So I have questions too. So I'm going to start with Lisa. I want you to think back to the end of the relationship. If you were to imagine looking into a mirror and seeing yourself, who was that woman? Can you describe who that woman was looking back at you?
God. I don't know an answer, because I think when I looked at her, all I know is that I didn't identify with her. She was someone else. I actually vividly remember talking to myself as if now I feel like a lunatic, but like I wasn't me. I was a different person. I was me talking to me. New me talking to old me, younger me talking to old. Yeah, I don't know, but I remember there was even an incident of abuse where I was like watching it happen, even though I was in it, obviously, but a physical abuse situation. I feel like I was floating above me watching what was happening. And I feel like when I would look in the mirror, particularly towards the end, I would look in the mirror and I would say, like, I would cry and I would say, what's wrong with you? Oh, I would honestly say that. It sounds so awful to say now, but like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Why would you be doing this? Why do you care? He doesn't care. I would look at myself in the mirror and I would say, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. And I would just tell myself that over and over again to try to get myself to like snap out of it, which is of course not how it works, but anything to like, this isn't you. And I would try to think about like the way people see me at work and my friends, and people don't see me this way. This isn't me. So I was so angry and disappointed in myself. And I was so ashamed that I was ever so stupid as to be in this. And man, when you have that epiphany that it has nothing to do with intelligence or socioeconomic background or anything, and that you didn't deserve it, when you can let go of all of that heavy, I don't know if it's self-hate, but self-blame, when you can just release yourself from all of that, it is freeing. And I literally lost 30 pounds, by the way. So that too.
Yeah. Plus the, however many pounds. I used to always say, like, I lost a lot of weight when I got divorced or separated.
I lost 300 pounds. Yes.
I lost 200
Half
pounds.
hormone. Yes. Dead of my ex. Yes.
It's the best diet, Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you. Kerry, here's my question for you. So what steps did you take on your own personal healing journey to rediscover yourself? And also, what was that like to fall in love with yourself again?
I was so constricted. My story didn't just start with this relationship. I mean, I had grown up with parents with personality disorders. So I had been in a box from the moment I was born, trying to keep chaos and difficulty contained and just survive. That was my focus, just survive. And I had learned all these rules about how not to bring attention to them, to the chaos at home, to the degree that we were a mess. and just to keep my head down. So my first thing that I did was, besides getting into that group, was that I started writing. And was learning how to do narrative writing, which is really different because I'd learned how to write papers for school, but to tell a story and to tell it in a way that people feel like they're living it along with me is a really different kind of style of writing. And I had come across a book that's called Your Life as Story. And in it, she had this powerful quote that I had to actually write it down and put it to my computer so I would see it. And it says, write what you dare not say. And I would look at that and I would say, I'm terrified to say the truth because it's so horrific. But then I would say, write what you dare not say. And it started to help me break out of this prison. I hadn't realized I was in this prison. So I feel like there's a lot that here I am in my late 50s and early 60s, discovering myself. Like I even changed color in my hair and I'm wearing blonde. I would never, the person I was in high school could have never imagined having long hair and wearing blonde. But I feel like I'm like rediscovering myself, aspects that I felt like when you're living in these just this difficulty where every step is the wrong step and the rules are constantly changing and you're just trying. I remember I used to hide in my room because if I was out of sight, I was out of mind, and then the least would leave me alone. And same with him, if I wasn't in his line of sight, then he would leave me alone. I was just trying to stay hidden enough. And so for me, it's been a process of discovery that it's safe to be me, and it's safe to speak the truth, and it's safe to stand out. It's safe to wear blonde hair. So that's what I've been doing. It's just to take these risks that have never felt like I've been able to do before in my life.
I love that. And we're getting from the chat that you're beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you. I love those. I want everyone to know here that we are invited. We're inviting you into this, and we're inviting ourselves into this special community. It is a really unique community that we have a secret little language. We're in a secret club. No one has to join, but it's healing and really working through some of these obstacles and getting to the point of change, the point of healing where we are now transforming into a new woman takes these three things. We need to address our shame and heal through it. We need to address and acknowledge the isolation that we put ourselves in, and then losing ourselves and regaining that identity. And what better way to do that than on a beautiful beach in Mexico? So I don't know if you know this, but this has been in the works for a little bit. We've been talking about this retreat, and we're really excited to chat with you about it. If you haven't heard already, we are hosting a all-women's healing retreat in Mexico on February, what are the dates? 21st?
21st to 25th. Yep.
21st to the 25th. It is a 5-day healing retreat, women's only. We have been putting some information out about it. It is called Rising Strong, and it's going to be in Rising Strong 2024. And this is where you're going to get all of these tips, all of this in workshops, coaching. We're going to have the lifestyle. So you're going to have the food, and you're going to have the experience and all of the pampering and all the self-care, self-love. And then you're going to have community. So you're going to meet with us, all three of us, plus all the other survivors that have already joined the retreat that will be there as guests. And you are all invited. So we have a little bit of a vetting process where we do a readiness survey, check to see if you are ready to come to this trip. But because you're on this webinar, this is your prerequisite. You're here now, so you're invited. You'll be getting an email at the end of this webinar inviting you to the trip, and all of the support, everything you've learned here today is going to be brought to life in person. We really want you to come. This is been a really special night, and so we want to give you a special gift. We've had a very gracious donation from an anonymous donor, and so for the first 6 people, so you're going to get an email after with a link to be invited. You're automatically speed pass right to the invite round. So if you do apply to come to the trip and book your reservation, you will be one of the 6 people, the first 6 people to access this donation. So it is $600. So we're going to be giving for the first 6 people $100 off of the total trip cost. So I see lots of people in the chat here chatting it up. So when you do get that email, if this is something that you want to join, we would love to meet you there. We would love to see you and watch you transform and really just have yourself look in the mirror on the last day of that trip and say to yourself, we made it. We made it. Love to see you do that. The coupon code is Secret Healing. It is only available for the first 6 people. So once we hit 6, donezo, but you can still join because you're still here. And so you can still join, you just don't get the discount. So for the first 6 people, all right, we're really happy and we're really pleased with this evening. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed our webinar tonight, and I hope you got something out of it. And for those of you who are wanting to join the trip, we cannot wait to meet you there.
Amazing. Thank you so much to everyone, and we will see you in Mexico. All right. Have a great night. Bye.